Hello and welcome back. In this short lecture, we're going to learn about how to enable third-party updates, beginning with SCCM version 1806 third-party software update catalogs node within SCCM console. It is available. So earlier you used to use the scoop as the additional tool, but now it's no more or not required. Another way, it's going to be published that entire configuration directly right from your SCCM console. To begin with that, there are few of the pre-requirements that we need to talk about definitely when you enable third-party software updates. Like you need to definitely have the sufficient disk space because we're talking about third-party updates, and the size also should be monitored, and also your soup role must be in a HTTPS format, that is it should run on a port 443 protocol, so it should be a secured one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to enable the configuration which needed as a pre-requirement. Then we would also jump into how to enable within this demo, and we also download those like Lenovo or maybe Adobe specific, and then we would deploy that to a specific collection. That concludes this entire video. Now let's begin with that being said. Now you see here there are 6 different certificates out there. At this point of time, there's no other certificates which are specific to WSS or maybe third-party specific certificates like self-certificates are not available if you see here. So I'm going to jump into the other sections, like especially for the software update point. And within the software update point, I can actually show you there's something called, let me show you the basic configuration what I have here. You see here there's nothing products, and if you see here except now let's jump into the third party. This is the first step we need to enable definitely. So when you choose your software, the first radio button like config mgr certificate, that's going to be a self certificate which is going to create in a minute, and it's going to come up here. But let's wait for some time. It's not going to come up right away because we have to do some other checks also. So I'm going back to configuration, now if I just go back to a registry, I should have a value that would automatically create a self-signed certificate if you wanted, like HKLM software Microsoft update services. There I need to create a dword key like enable self-signed certificate. So when you configure that specific one, it's gonna create automatically a self-signed certificate with a trusted publisher within the trusted root account. This has been very well documented within the Microsoft site also. So you just have to configure that. Later point you need to configure your SSL on your soup also. So I'm just changing the value to 1, so that would actually create my SSL. Now on my soup role, I need to specify to communicate with SSL only, that additional option I have to do it. So for what I have done is I've just third-party option on my soup server, and now additional registry key setting. So that would actually create the self-signed certificate in case if it is not happening, or it's a remote DP or remote soup server, then you would be not doing that. Otherwise you don't need to do it. So if you see here the third party, the certificate is still not it came, and we just enable that specific option. Now I'm going back to the soup role and properties of that. There is a required SSL checkbox should be taken up. I'm going to take that. So that would actually takes the specific configuration, and now apply OK. So that way it's going to work on 8531, which is a SSL port for soup server. So that's where it's going to work. Now as a next step, if I can wait for some more time, that would automatically create this self-signed certificate. Instead of I wait for some more time, I can straightforward go to maybe client agent, or maybe I can directly configure. In fact, it doesn't come here, the certificates, as you know. To that also it's not going to come up, but if I just go back to, maybe let's jump into client agents and show me, let me show you the specific agent setting that to be enabled for the third-party agents. So once you configure this, you just go to software updates category, client agent. I would recommend you to configure your own specific things, like a specific agent, client agent setting, and then you configure the specific setting. But since it's a lab for me, I can straightforward configure on my default client settings. So here, if you see here, in this and this button, if you just go down, enable third-party software updates is set to no. Now I'm going to set it to yes. That would actually configures this as button, will allow the clients to use a self-signed certificate, also to trust this hardware vendors like Lenovo, Dell, or Fuji, or Adobe, and then it gets installed. So technically you will have here one certificate as the SCCM certificate, and the client also will have an additional certificate. Both would communicate by using this certificate mechanism. Now let's go back to software update and see that the certificate is not yet coming up here. So instead of waiting to get that specific certificate automatically created, I'm going to jump into the console again for the software update. This is where actually the third-party catalogs will be there. So here I'm going to subscribe and do the configuration, so that, for example, if I take Lenovo, I want to subscribe that specific catalog. What it means is, if I subscribe, it's gonna download that cabinet file. So it's a cabinet file, is, if you know, or normally CAB files are similar to your zip file, which will have all the files, or all the inventory information, or in other way, directly to put it to the straight to the point, all the update specific metadata information will be available into the CAB file. So even Microsoft also does the same, MSIQ2.CAB file, which is the which it actually downloads as the software update point from the Microsoft site, or Microsoft update server. So in the similarly for the Lenovo, this is a file which is available there as the independent hardware vendor. They are maintaining that. So to trust this, to trust and import into SCCM, you need to verify their certificates. That's what it's going to come up in a minute or so. And once you review that specific certificate, it's going to install. That means you're going to import the specific certificate in your SSM console. So in the future, when you try to update or when you try to sync it, it's gonna reach the Lenovo site, and since we have the certificate, trusted certificate, on our SCCM application, it's gonna allow us to download. Let's do that. Click on next. That's gonna actually downloading that CAB file for us. Once a CAB file is downloaded successfully, it's gonna ask you to view the certificate. So this is a certificate that you need to import with the current local machine, and that would actually makes as a green checkbox that gives trusted. Then you have to accept the terms and conditions. And starting from the latest version of SCCM, you do have here individually you can sync up. So I'm just taking here as a normal sync process. So now it's gonna sync, like you have a right click and sync. This is a new option with the latest versions. Now you can monitor that log file, which is ISV specific log file, which is going to create in a minute or so. If you can open SMS_ISV updates log file, this very clearly tells about the sync process which is happening. If you monitor, in fact, it's all about Lenovo. So in a minute or so, we would even give a try for Adobe, because Adobe is not there by default. For that, we need to do some modifications. For example, we need to go to the Adobe side and get that specific CAB file location or the XML file information, and then add it. So for now, if I just go back to the software update point and check out for my classifications, especially, I don't see any product specific to Lenovo or Adobe as of now, because it's not at sync. So actually you need two syncs, not just the one sync. the first sync which is happening is a kind of metadata, and later point for the downloads you need to do it. So let's jump into the log file one more time and check out whether it takes some more time. So looks like it's taking some time. In meantime, this is the Adobe link. You can check out this link. This link has the all available catalogs. So DC Classic 2017, specific, and 15, and continuous track, like that's the one. So we can take that XML format file, which is nothing but the CAF file would come up. So if you try to copy, it might not come as HTTPS. You just have to add that HTTPS if it is not copying, because it requires the HTTPS. So going back to the third-party software catalog, and if you see that when I try to add, there's a red mark. The reason is whatever I try to copy here from here, the DC continuous track specific one, which was just the HTTP. So I need to give here support information, and if I try to click next, it's gonna say that hey, it must be HTTP yes. So I'm just putting there the CAF file URL as HTTP yes. So if you see here, everything is HTTP yes, but unfortunately this one is not HTTP yes. If I try to copy also, so I'm just going to edit this. Oops, that's the wrong one. Yeah, that's one. So let's go back to the HTTP yes. That would actually takes the CAF file format, and click on next. That would actually downloads and adds the CAF relevant one. Now you have a new third-party updates rendered. Now all you have to do is you have to download that. So I'm going to do that. So any downloads, as I said earlier, we need to trust the certificate. So I'm going to install this specific certificate specific to Adobe INC. You see here, that's what I'm going to do it. It's imported. Now I'm accepting their conditions. Now this is going to be a schedule like any normal schedule, and that has been done. Now as a next step, I need to right click and sync now. So that would actually syncs along with the Lenovo. So there's something going on for the Lenovo for the syncing. Similarly, Adobe also would start in a minute or so. Once it started, I would be showing you. But in fact, if I try to filter with Adobe, it don't show anything at this point of time because the first sync is not yet completed and the second one is in the pipeline. So no use. So let's go back and wait for some time to come up the entire sync to be happen. So I'm gonna wait for a minute and then come back here. So I'm just removing all the filters, so let it monitor the log file. Now if you see here, the updates has been done, even the Adobe as well as the Lenovo. And if I filter with Adobe, which contains anything called Adobe, so I could see a lot of things. And if you see here 19, 17, different updates. So let's go back to the software certificate, which is a SSL certificate should be created. So we'll go back there and have a look on it until even the products also now it's just showing because it's just completed the sync. If it's not yet completed, you can wait for that. And the most important point would be here, as soon as you take this checkbox here, it doesn't mean that it will show up in your SCCM console. You have to do one more extra sync. That means that's a second sync which you have to perform. So that the schedule, based on the schedule, it's going to happen. So what we have done is, so far it just downloaded the metadata information, but it is not imported to actual SCCM console. So to do that, we need to take the checkboxes and ensure the one more sync. So let's do that, one more sync. And or we can wait for some more time to sync to happen automatically, or we can right click here and sync directly. So if I just before syncing, I wanted to show you here, like if I try to do Adobe or anything with the Lenovo, nothing is coming up. If you see here, all these are specific to Microsoft, and the Flash player is one other one, but there's nothing new. Maybe it's the more than 10,000. So if you want me to filter like Lenovo, nothing there. Similarly other products. So now I'm gonna sync it. So this is a wsync mgr log file which we monitor. That would take a minute or so. So there's a WCM. So let me open up the WSync manager file. It should be open earlier, so it should be in the history. WSync MGR. So it's not yet started because we just initiated. So it might take a minute or so to actually start this configuration in the background. That inbox has to be monitored properly and component to be started. Now if you see under certificates, in the meantime the certificates has been created here, a lot of them. If you see here, Lenovo came as well as the Adobe came, so and also the top two were self-signed certificate specific one. So these got created and that's good. And if I just go to the properties of that third-party specific checkbox or the radio button, I should be able to see when the certificate called self-signed certificate is already available. It should be available in that way. So let me show you that I should go back to admins. Now still the sync is going on. That's a different story in the background. So it might take a minute or so. Now I'm just going to check the component, software update point component, and under third party tab, you see here now the certificate has been created, which is a self-signed certificate with the thumbprint and expiration date. So whenever it got expired, it's going to automatically renew it, or you may have to renew it. But for now it's still going on the sync. So I will pause for some time and I'll come back to you. Now if you see here something is coming up, it's just the 18 of the result. That means sync is happening, it's not yet completed. So you would be getting more than 18 definitely, because a lot of things were synced if you remember in the previous log. So this is a log which is showing as 348 different items to be synced. So all of them are new completely, and it might take a minute or so. So in the background, if I search with the Lenovo, it is coming up, but it's just a 17. So the sync is still going on. Once the sync is complete, I should be able to get it for the Lenovo as well as for the Adobe product. Now I'll take as example for the Adobe, and what I'll do is I would be creating a package for the Adobe, and I would distribute that specific package. So I'll just wait for a second to complete this entire sync process. Now the sync has been completed. If you see here in the background, if I just search one more time, it should actually show more than 80. Now it's showing as 27 because the sync is completed. But if you see, all these has in a blue color arrow, right? It should be in a green, then only you can deploy it. So we're gonna make that turn into green state. So we are getting for Adobe also, but it is in a blue state. Now the icon must be changed. So let's take one example here to make it to green or to deploy the Adobe product. So if you see here 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and the 19.021.20061, if I start downloading, I would get error. So as a first step, what I have to do is publish third party update content. That's a action I have to do it. So what would happen is it's gonna background as soon as I click on that specific button in the background, it's gonna contact with that certificate based to Adobe site, and then it start going to download from there. So let me open the log file for you and show you what is happening in the background. So the log is still waiting to change that component status. So it has every component definitely will have a some interval to sync or to start that specific component. So we have to wait till the time comes. So I'm just waiting for that component to start automatically, or I can initiate. But if I try to download, I get that error. So definitely I got proceed from the blue. So that's the way you have to wait and publish third-party software update content to a SCCM. Then that would change to green. Basically it comes as the MSP. If you see the properties, you don't have a values like the content information here, for example. All that information is not available here, especially the download information. So that would take some time to trigger that publish third-party software update content. So if you see here, it's actually doing that. If you see here, MSP file is getting downloaded and the percentage is completed 48. So that's good. So that's the only one which we started like 19.0.21.2.0061. So it's still downloading. Once it is downloaded completely, we get that file. So as a next step, we would download to we download and create a package, but again one more sync is needed. So we're gonna wait for one more sync, or we have to insert the one more sync once this is completed. So this entire process in the background would take, because we're on top of it, so we are able to get it on immediate basis, but in the background it takes some time, maybe 30 minutes or so to completely write back. So if you see here, it's calling to the WSS to add that specific one into the content, so that itself takes maybe a minute or so to write into the database, so that this specific MSP will be available. So that takes some time here. So I need to wait for a minute. Once the log is processed here completely, then I need to insert one more sync. If you've not inserted the sync, it might take some more time, or you might have to wait more time. If you see here, it's still in a blue color. It's going to change that to green once the log file is completely processed. Now it's completed. That's good. So we can see it is successful and completed, but if I just go back to the status, it might not change immediately. It takes a little bit of time. Post to that, it should be okay. So you see here, it's not a change. So I need to wait for a minute or so, or I need to initiate the complete all software updates to be synced, so that it's going to change. It's going to check the all the changes, and that would actually start doing. Later point I can deploy it like this, but I don't want to do it now. Definitely I have to wait if I even the download also showing the error, because it's not into the green. So always any updates must be in a green, otherwise you can't deploy it. That's the well-known factor. If you see here, still there, because I need to right click in the left side to all software updates and initiate the software update. But so you do the any other checkbox, any other step, it doesn't work, like download, creating software update, or membership, or publish. That doesn't work actually, because it has to sync from the WSUs. So here, if you see here in the background, I just synced it with the WSUs. Now if I refresh, now this will change to blue color. You see here 19.21 Adobe Acrobat DC update. So now we have the update. So if you're not, if you're not getting do that synchronization, then that changes to blue. Then it remains the same thing. The way you create, you create the software update group, you create that deployment, and then you would target to your collections, right? The same thing would happen here. Like I just created here. From here onwards, it's the same as the normal software updates. Like I just created the software update group, and I can see that that's showing as only one software update. Now all I have to do is I have to either download, or I can do the deploy. While doing the deployment also, as I said, you can do the package creation. So I'm just going to create this step like a deploy, just a name, a meaningful name here. So in this case, deploy updates Adobe. So I don't have any other templates. If you have any template, you can give here the required collection. So in my case, I'm just giving as a demo, and I wanted to view all the messages so that I know what's going to happen. I wanted to give at least a week or two, so that the users can install on their own these updates. If not, it's gonna become as a mandatory later point. I don't want these missions to be rebooted automatically, so I have taken that checkbox. If you want to set alerts, you can do that. And here the deployment package name, so I have a share folder here, so which is SCCM update share. So this folder name and path I can give here. So let me browse and show you here by creating a new folder like Adobe. So Adobe, maybe December 2019, and then select and give a package name. These all are the quite same like you do on normal patching method, right? So here I have a 2 DPs, so I'm going to choose 2 DPs, and it's going to distribute there. Once it is downloaded, so the download source is internet, and the client-side language selection is default for me, and I want to open even for the boundary specific groups, so just taking that. So that's created. So this is how you're gonna create software deployment for your third-party software updates. So this concludes how to start creating your updates. Not just that, also how to enable third-party software updates within your SCCM console. I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.